Hello there, and welcome. Thanks for watching. And if you like these videos, please subscribe and hit the like button. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask. Today, I want to talk about karma and what it is. And because a lot of people have the incorrect views of what karma is. And so I want to get into that in more detail. Because some people don't even believe karma exists. They think that their actions are irrelevant to what happens to them later on. Because what some people think karma is, let me start there. Let me tell you what the wrong idea of karma is. If you think karma is if you do bad things, that somewhere there is this being, invisible man, that is keeping track of all the bad things you do in a book up in the sky somewhere, and he's going to keep track of all the people on the earth and then do bad things to you to even out what you've just done. So when you do bad things will happen to you because the invisible man in the sky is going to keep things in balance. Kind of like Santa Claus, who keeps track of those who are naughty and those who are nice. Now, if you think that's it, then that's not what karma is. Now, people will also think karma is magic, that it is some type of magic that happens out in the universe, and when you do bad things, well, even though you don't get caught today, somewhere down the line, that something is going to bad that will happen to you to make up for it. Those aren't what karma really is. Those are explanations of karma by people that don't really understand it, and that's okay, because we all learn. There were times I thought karma was that, and I didn't believe it. I said, that's stupid. That's not karma. Anybody thinking that is not living in reality. Well, they're not. Because there is no invisible man keeping track of you. You keep track of you. That's where karma is. Karma happens here. It's psychology. So let's get into what karma really is, because it's a real thing. And is it magic? Yes. Because magic is the manipulation of unseen forces. So if you don't know about these forces, then they're unseen to you, and it's going to seem like magic. But once I explain it to you, the magic goes away, and it really isn't magic. It's just knowledge of yourself and psychology, because that's what it is. And you can't escape karma. You can change it by how you are, who you are, how you act, and your personality. So let's get into karma. Karma, the word karma, is a Sanskrit word, ancient Indian, from India language. The Hindus use the word karma to describe this thing that goes on in our lives. And in Christianity, in the Bible, karma is explained as you reap what you sow. What I forget the exact quote, but that's what it's saying. I can't remember. Thou you sow, you shall reap. I'm not sure. I can look that up. But you reap what you sow is what most people say, anyway. And that means that what you give out in life, you get back. And how does that work? And it's not easy to explain because, but once you understand it, it's really very simple. Let me give you a definition, my definition of karma. And it may not be just mine, it's the one that I've come up with. My karma is the sum of a person's actions that creates their psychological personality, which is then projected onto others who reflect those actions back to yourself, to themselves. Let me read that again. Karma is the sum of your actions that creates the psychological personality, who you are, which you then project onto others in the world. And they project that and reflect it back to you. So if you're an angry, mean, selfish person, and you view the world that way, and you give those intentions and that energy out to others, many are going to give it back to you. Maybe not all. A lot of people don't reflect. I try not to reflect. I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. The golden rule. And the reason is the golden rule. The golden rule keeps you psychologically sound because it keeps your thoughts in a non-selfless way. And this is important because this is how right and wrong and good and evil is how it affects you. Kind of like how does your actions affect you psychologically if you're doing good actions or bad actions? So in order to understand what good actions are and bad actions, well, selfish actions are evil. Stealing, taking somebody else's property, hitting them or beating them when it's not in self-defense, attacking, anything that is theft on somebody else against their will for your own good is a selfish thing to do. There are other selfish things that are not against the law, like just greed. Selfishness in itself isn't against the law. You can be selfish to anybody you want. But some selfish things are, like stealing. That's against the law. So selfishness. Feelings and selfishness comes from our ego. Our ego wants everything for us. Now, this is what in the Bible and in the mind we call the evil side, the dark side of ourselves. And we got to accept that these are in here. Everybody thinks everybody else deserves karma, but not themselves, because there's nothing evil about me. That's wrong. There's good and bad in everybody. And this selfishness is the bad. Now, some will argue that selfishness isn't bad because they don't see the results of it. But selfishness does not help you, regardless of what it does to other people. We're talking about you and your mind. Selfishness propagates more selfishness. And here's the funny thing about karma. Karma in the Hindus, India, it really just means action, or to do. Your actions and what you do. And once you do something like rob a bank or treat somebody selfishly, karma's already got you. Because you wouldn't do those things if you were aware of what it's doing to you. Now, I think we can understand, people that rob banks and hurt other people, they end up in prison. People say, well, that's karma. And it is. That's what it is. You build the personality that you project onto others, and then that personality gets reflected back to you, and you start to suffer against society. You know, people want to run up in the woods and live all alone so they can be nice and selfish and they won't bother anybody. But they have a hard time. I think we're social people. Most people who live alone in a cabin for a long period of time lose their minds. Very, very difficult not to. Can be done. I guess some people have. Very sound minds can. That's a subject for another time. We're talking about karma and good things and bad things that we do. So the selfish things are the evil things that we do. Evil only because they cause us suffering to ourselves. In the long run, you might do something today that will not cause you suffering right away, but it will propagate thoughts or actions that you do that will, in the future, greatly increase. And it's a terrible thing because, it's important we know this because, suicide, people are committing suicide because there's so much suffering in their life. A lot of that is brought on by themselves, by their own karma, which suicide is a selfish act in itself. When you get down to the psychology of it. So we got to be aware of what these thoughts propagate. Selflessness is good. That's what's good, giving. And that's what Jesus talked about. That's what almost every one of these religious books and teachings are stories to tell you about this. What's good and what's bad for you. Because sometimes your actions are bad for others and they're bad for you. Sometimes they're bad for others and they're good for you. And vice versa. Depends on the actions and what is going on. You can defend yourself with deadly force if need be. That's not a bad action. But for attacking somebody else unprovoked is. You've got to know the difference. So we break it down to selfless and selflessness and selfish. Selflessness is good. When you're sharing and caring, really caring. Not just pretending you're caring. Because that's what is important here. Now let me explain. Some people will give to charities, but then go on TV and say, look at me, I'm giving to charity. Ain't I great? Ain't I a wonderful person? That's the ego wanting something out of that action of giving and helping somebody else. Now, it may help those people, but it's not helping you. You're still acting selfishly. You're doing business. You're not giving. You want something out of it. And there's a difference psychologically in your mind. That has already got you. Even if once you decided to do that, karma's already got you from what you've propagated in the past. People think karma is what's going to get you happen later on. No, karma is what's happening now from what you've already experienced and done and the person that you've become. You can change your future karma by the way you act now. And when I talk about caring, those who really care, that are helping people, aren't worried about recognition. They're not giving to charity and then going on TV smiling and want to use them as a prop to plug their business sometimes. That's doing business. That's not charity. And we got to understand that the ego is what causes this. Selfishness and ego go hand in hand. And the ego could be considered evil, and sometimes we have to suppress that, attack it, look at it, be aware of what the ego is making us do. And it serves its purpose. But there comes a point when you have to realize that the ego doesn't want to look at itself. It won't. Because it's scary to think that the ego is the result of a lot of this evil that we do on a daily basis. But we don't. We always think it's somebody else. And, I do selfish things at times, and I think everybody can do certain selfish things. That doesn't make it right because you do it. You got to be aware, and you do less and less, and you see that it changes over time. And caring when you do charity is what it's about. Really caring. Some people look at people getting bombed in other countries and they say, oh yeah, that's too bad. But yet if it happens to their family, it's a whole world of difference when it's your child getting blown to bits. But when it's somebody else's, oh well, we'll make up some way to believe they deserved it. That's not caring. But that's also another story for another time. So we're into karma. So what karma does is when we do selfish actions, just like the sum of those actions, not just one or two actions, it's the sum of all of the selfish actions that you do on a daily basis. Or let's say selfless. We can switch them words. You do selfless actions and giving and caring on a daily basis over and over to try and get through tough times in their life, whatever it may be. If you do things to try to help others on a daily basis, that changes you. It changes your perspective on the world, and it changes the way people treat you. Not because you want it, they just do, because there's an energy that you give out. Just like when you give out an energy that you're a selfish, angry person. People see that too. Other people see you. Even if they're not telling you, because most of them don't. So, the energy and the reflections that we give out to other people, you could say one's a positive and one's a negative, but they could be interchanged because it's just a flow. Part of the dualistic world that we live in. And one can bring a lot of suffering in your life, and you can learn from that suffering. But as a society, selfishness is a dangerous thing. It's at the root of all wars. It's at the root of all suffering on our planet. It's getting exactly what it deserves. Karma. Selfish actions will get you selfish actions later. You're propagating selfishness. So we have to propagate selflessness in the world if you want a more peaceful world. Now, there's kind of a paradox here when we talk about ego and wanting a more peaceful world. Because that's kind of a selfish thing, isn't it? I want a more peaceful world, so I'm going to be more peaceful to everybody else, so my karma brings me back something good. Or are you doing it for other people? There's always a paradox in here. Life is a paradox. But you got to know what you want out of it. You want a more peaceful world? Be a more peaceful person. That's what I've learned over time. And living in comparison with other people is a difficult thing. because you always end up dying second. You're never good enough. You'll die a loser when you compare yourself to other people. Because there'll always be somebody better. Always. Because that's what you're propagating in your head. You've lived life for so long, the karma that you built up. You'll never die number one if you try and live in competition with other people. And there are people that try, but they suffer mentally. It might be difficult to understand, but it's true. Hell, what it is, what really hell is, it's not this place underground where there's a red guy with horns and a pitchfork. It doesn't exist. It's not real. Let's talk real. What hell is, right here on earth. And some people are living in it. Hell is the result of living selfishly or evilly. And it's in the mind. The world can be a horrible place for some people, so horrible, they'll kill themselves. Those people are living in hell. And with a little knowledge, that can change overnight, in the blink of an eye. Through gratefulness and understanding, heaven is also right here on earth. It's not some place you're going to go to later, after you're dead. You kill the ego. That's what dies. The self, the ego. Don't kill yourself. I'm not saying that. Kill the ego of the selfishness in yourself. You work on that. And what that leads to is peace and freedom. That's what all these religions are talking about. They're all trying to teach this process that leads to selflessness. And that's what Jesus is a representation of, this Christ consciousness that you can attain through awareness of how you think. It's psychology of our mind. And it's something we have to tread lightly, because we're looking, there is, you have to have good guidance, and you have to have rational, reasonable thinking. Because you can get lost, because everything goes in a circle. Like I said, their life is a paradox. So if you look far enough to the wrong, you're going to get right, and you look far enough left, you're going to get right, and if you look up far enough, you're going to get down. Now that may sound crazy to a lot of people, but those that have gone through the work, they know what I'm talking about. Because there is a circle of life. Everything goes in a circle. And that's a topic for another time, and I want to wrap it up here on karma, because it's getting a little long, and it's the golden rule to treat people the way you want to be treated, not the way they treat you. That's how you break karma. That's how you get karma to start working in your favor. And karma is not things you're expecting for yourself. Karma is your thoughts in your mind and the actions that you do. It changes your perspective of the world around you. You can see hell or you can see heaven. Because heaven is here. It's right on earth. The most beautiful thing you can imagine. Imagine what heaven is. Imagine what heaven is in your mind right now. It already exists. You can't imagine anything better than the earth we live in now. Sure, if you want to concentrate on all the bad things, but that's the point I'm getting at. Let's concentrate on the good things, and you'll see that you're already living in heaven. And then you'll see the ones who are living in hell. And if you're truly in heaven, you'll be wanting to help the ones in hell. And that's about all for now. I'm going to leave you with that definition of karma one more time. Karma is the sum of the person's actions that creates our psychological personality of who we are, which we project onto other people. And they reflect that personality and projection back to us. So what you give out, you get back. What you reap, you sow. And that's just the way it is, because people work that way. Yes, there will be some people who you treat one way and they're not going to treat you that way back. You might treat people really poorly, but they'll still treat you good. Those are the people that are trying to break the karma. Treat people the way you want to be treated, not the way they treat you. And that's how you break karma. That's how you change a negative situation into a positive one. And one person at a time knows this. It changes society to a peaceful, more positive. Well, I guess we could call it positive. Positive and negative is perspective. Because you need the evil to have the good. And that's another discussion for another time, because you can't have one without the other. Now, I hope you all enjoyed this discussion about karma. Hit the subscribe button so you can get other videos. They'll be notified, and hit a like. And have a great day.